Stephen.
Hey,
Stephen,
Dennis.
again.
How are you?
I'm good. Rushing back from the cinemas with my daughter.
Awesome, awesome. And do you think that Michael is going to be
Well, he said if he can get on because he's had problems with the weather.
okay? Okay. Well, we'll hope that he. Do you think that we should we wait or should we just start? What do you think?
Hold on. Let me see where he is. He said
Sure.
if he doesn't, because he's only just got his power back on this morning.
Yeah.
He sent me some photos of all the snow around his house.
Yeah. There's a bad cold weather going
Yeah,
through here in the U.S. as well.
yeah. So he said, look, the power has just come back on. However, it's going to snow again later. I'm told, just a reminder that if you don't hear from me, then it's because I've got no power. I got no
Okay,
power.
okay. Well
He's,
then,
he's using it.
if you don't mind, and if you think it's okay,
Yeah, it'll be fine.
and you don't think Michael will be offended, then I think what we'll do, Dennis, is start,
Yeah, that's fine.
and we'll hope he joins us.
Yeah,
Um,
1 second. Let me sort out my drink.
sure. Take your time.
No, well,
And also, can you? I just want to make sure that you can see me
I can see
clearly.
you. I can see you and I can hear you. Just let me get me.
Awesome.
Let me get
Excellent.
me ice. 1 second.
Sure.
1 second. That's great.
And I have you recording on a number of different devices, which is most assuredly a good thing because I had a technical issue at one point in one of my last interviews. And if for some reason we should have any technical difficulties, I'll just reconnect with you right away.
Are you talking to me, Stephen?
Yes, I was just letting you know if we have any technical difficulties, I'll just reconnect with you right away.
Yeah, that's no problem.
I don't think it should happen. I think everything is going to be
It'll be,
Irie. And are
it'll be
you
fine.
zooming in from Birmingham, Dennis?
Yes,
Okay, cool.
and it's wet. It's wet. It's not as cold as where Michael is, but it's wet.
Where is Michael exactly? Where is he?
He's in a place called Ontario, Canada.
Oh, okay, okay, very good. Now, um, I want to officially thank you, Dennis, for
Hmm.
taking the time to do the interview. I want
No
to
problem.
confess to you up front, yeah, a little bit that as a student of reggae and also a reggae historian of sorts,
Yeah.
um, that my knowledge of British reggae and the British reggae scene could really stand for an upgrade. Um, and, and so and so it's a joy to connect with you, Dennis. And
No problem.
that said, when earlier this year, when my good friend, the legendary sound engineer and dub pioneer scientist, many
Yes.
people also know him as Hopeton Brown, he suggested that I really should consider trying to interview musical youth. I immediately, Dennis,
Yeah.
like many people who grew up in the 80s, as
Yeah.
I did, my mind immediately leaped to the song "Pass the Dutchie," and
Well,
and then I immediately thought of that very famous musical youth the music video for Pass the Dutchie, which anyone can and should immediately, if they haven't already. I'm sure many people who are watching this will have already, but if you haven't,
yeah.
please immediately go and Google up the musical youth. I think it's probably been viewed millions and millions of times.
Yeah.
But immediately that song came to mind. But um, I certainly have a number of questions, Dennis, that I'm going to want to ask about um, musical youth because it's certainly the song. I mean, not musical youth, but about Pass the Dutchie because it's the song that musical youth is best known for. But I want to by way of introduction um,
Yeah.
is to just say in the last few months, Dennis,
Yeah.
since we scheduled the interview and got in touch, to begin with, I've really tried to become a student of musical youth,
Mm-hmm.
and of the band's, history, and of your music as best as I can, far beyond past the Dutchie. As
Mm-hmm.
massive of a hit as that is, and always will be. And one of the things that was a real eye opener for me, Dennis, that I would recommend to every reggae fan, every music fan who happens to catch this interview and doesn't know about this already, on your musical streamer, there is some very good musical youth anthology.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say this is because sometimes you can't find, it's not necessarily the easiest thing to, you can find the Youth of Today album, which was
Yeah.
a giant album, but the different style, it may be hard to find all those tracks. And the anthology is something that people should really, was released in '94 on the
Yeah.
One Way Records label, and it has most, if not all, of the songs of Musical Youth's first two albums on it. Not all of them,
Yeah.
and it's wicked. It's quickly become one of my favorite LPs, Dennis, to listen to. I mean, I am just wowed by it. When I listen to it, I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if anyone has ever made this comparison, but I mean, I think of like this is like a British Jamaican Jackson 5 that I'm
Almost.
listening to.
Almost. Almost. Almost.
Yeah.
The only thing with us at the Jackson Fives is that they could dance and move. We played, we played instruments, and we were. I wasn't a very good dancer, as my daughter tells me.
Wow. Well, I mean, I don't know. I am just so blown away when I listen to the talent on the album. And I want to mention too, I will certainly be asking about it, that I've also listened closely. I'm sure Michael, if he were, later, if he himself catches the interview too,
Yeah.
will be pleased to hear that I've listened closely also to When Reggae Was King, which
Good.
was the album that
Last
both
album.
you and Michael released just last year, I believe, or now maybe it was in 2020.
Yeah.
And
Released in America last year.
yeah, and it has some very, very cool songs I'm going to ask about. But of course, long before we can get to Reggae, When Reggae Was King,
Yeah.
before we discuss the present day iteration of Musical Youth, which only consists of yourself and Michael,
Yeah.
Dennis, we have to go back to the beginning when Musical Youth first began.
Yes.
I believe in the late 1970s, I think around 1979. Is that
Spot
accurate?
on. Spot on.
Okay. Now, my
Spot on.
understanding is, Dennis, that Music Youth was really started by Michael's father, George Grant, and also Frederick Waite Sr., and that they were friends in Jamaica before they came to the UK.
I don't know if there were friends in Jamaica. I've never heard that before.
Okay.
But Fred was teaching Calvin guitar,
Wow.
and Calvin was 8 at the time, and Michael was 10. And he was
Yeah.
teaching. Michael was having piano lessons, classical, but then he heard, and he'll tell you himself, and you've probably seen it, that he just heard the Exodus album, and it blew him away. And that was it for him then. It was reggae music
Wow.
all the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So,
Frederick Waite Sr., he was a
yeah,
member of the Jamaican singing group, The Techniques, before he migrated to the UK. Is that true?
that's very true. Yes, the Techniques was his group.
Was George, the Techniques are, a professional Jamaican singing group. Was George Grant, I was going to ask Michael, but since you're going to have to answer all Michael's questions now,
That's fine.
which is, was, to the best of your ability, was George also, was he playing musician? Was he a musician on the same kind of level?
Not to my knowledge. Not in
Okay.
all the years that I knew.
Yeah.
You know.
And so now, to be clear, when the band first started, the members included Michael on keyboards, and then you had Kelvin, who rapped, or and toasted, and he also played guitar, as you mentioned. And then you had another set of brothers who, as I've mentioned, Freddie Sr., but you had who was their father, but the next set of brothers was Patrick, who are no longer with us, I should say.
Yeah.
and rest in peace. And I'll certainly have some questions about them.
Mhm.
But Patrick Waite, who played bass,
Yeah,
and Freddie Jr., who played drums.
that's
That was
right.
the original the composition. You were not, Dennis, an original and one of the original members. Is that accurate? And can you explain? Even though
Okay.
I believe you went to school, you all were, schoolmates at Dutchie Manor, and you knew
Yeah.
them, and you were friends with them, and I believe, you may have been there when the band kind of first started up, but somehow you didn't end up as lead singer. Can you explain that?
Right. So what you're saying is correct. We all went to Dutchie Manor School, but here's how it worked. Junior and myself and Patrick were best friends.
Yeah,
And Junior told me about his dad teaching him drums and bass.
yeah.
And I did a little bit of singing. So Junior said, well, maybe you could come and sing. I said, all right. So I went to the very first rehearsal, number 20. Hold on, we were 23. Fred was 17, Offanem House, Kellett Road, Nechells. They were masonettes, tower
Wow.
blocks, right? Like, yeah, I suppose in America, what would you call it? Tower blocks, tall blocks,
Okay. Yeah.
apartment blocks.
Apartment complexes.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I went to the very first rehearsal and sat there in the rehearsals watching what was going on.
Yeah.
The next day I came to go to rehearsal and Fred banned me from rehearsals.
Why did he ban you from rehearsals?
Well, he said I threw some sweet wrappers, candy wrappers down the back of his settee, which I just had to accept. It's his house, So I was at the rehearsals all through the summer, but I never.
Oh
I
my
never
gosh.
the first one.
So he'd had it with you because you had littered in his house.
I never done. That's the thing. I never did.
You were innocent. You were innocent.
That was his excuse. But it's his house, so I can't argue with him. Get up.
Now, do you think, no, now I'm just curious, do you think that it was really true do you think that was really true, Dennis? Or do you think that he wanted to be the lead singer himself?
I guess he probably wanted to be the lead singer himself.
So that could have been
Because he ended up being the lead singer at the beginning.
That could have been part of it.
Yeah.
Now, Dennis, when in that early time when you were not the lead singer, and Musical Youth first began performing in pubs in Birmingham and making a name for itself, were you still, now he had banned you from rehearsals, and you weren't an official member, but you were still hanging around? Did you ever go to their performances back then? And were you still hanging? And were you still hanging around the band, pretty much?
Yes, every rehearsal I was there, waiting for them to finish, and help Calvin carry his guitar to rehearsals.
Now, would you say also that when I listen to that, and as I mentioned, the anthology, which combines those first two albums, I think that not enough is said about how accomplished as young men, as really young lads, you guys were. The musicianship. Who can we say, was it really Frederick Waite Sr. who, with his professional music background, taught these boys how to play these instruments, or did they also receive some kind of formal training elsewhere at Dutchie, or how did they learn to play these instruments so well?
It was down to, I can tell you now, it was down to Fred.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
His work ethic. The guys, we had to, before I joined, the band rehearsed all the time.
Wow.
They rehearsed, and Fred, he
drilled them.
He was a taskmaster. He didn't have no airs and graces about it. If you're not playing it right, you better start playing it right. He put the fear of God in you. That's basically what he did.
Did you get the sense that was instilled from his professional days in the techniques?
Probably, because I know in reading and studying Bob Marley, Bob was the same. Rehearsals, studio rehearsals, football rehearsals.
Right. Very focused on the music and on with a slight detour into the football, but very focused on what his mission was.
Yes.
Yeah.
We how can I say? we never actually set out to be as successful as we did
Yeah.
become or have become. But
Wow.
once it was thrust upon us, we had to deal with it. It
Yeah.
wasn't something we discussed as a band. It wasn't something we said, well, we want to be number one in the charts. No, 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 no. We just wanted to play our instruments to the best of our ability.
Wow. Now, in the chronology of that early history, of the band of Musical Youth, is it accurate that what really gave the band its first big break was when the BBC DJ radio announcer John Peel, on his very
Yeah,
popular show, he played the very first 45 that Musical Youth, my understanding is, you can tell me if I'm accurate, that's the first 45 Musical Youth ever recorded in the studio, was called Political and Generals, and he played
that's
them.
it. Yes, he did. And that was the number one show for all the A&R guys in the record companies.
Well, it's such and I hope you'll forgive me because I know you weren't singing lead at the time.
No, I wasn't.
And Freddie Senior was, but the song Political, the song on side A of that first Musical Youth 45, you people can easily Google it up. Because actually it's on Bandcamp and it's on YouTube and various things. One person has uploaded it with a sleeve that says,
right.
It's called a Reggae Archive Record.
That's it, from Birmingham.
Yeah, and it's super wicked, Dennis. It's so conscious. That 45, Political is such a righteous track. It calls. I never heard it before until I was preparing, and I've told a lot of people about it because it calls out the politicians for the unemployment
That's right.
at
Yeah.
that time. I mean,
Unemployment.
I just mentioned real quickly, if you don't mind, some of the lyrics include things like, "I'm just an ordinary man protesting for the working man," and also, "We don't want to be treated like roach on a chessboard."
That's Fred. That's
Yeah.
Fred's lyrics.
It's
That's
so
Fred's
wicked.
lyrics.
It's so conscious. And then there's the insistent refrain of the song, which is, "We want work politicians."
Yeah.
And it's really a powerful tune. Now, this was, as I say, the first 45. Do you remember? I know you weren't the lead singer, but were you there when the song was recorded, or do you remember anything about that song?
Yeah, I wasn't there when the song was recorded because obviously
Yeah.
Fred was in the studio and Fred didn't like me around there. So
Yeah.
I know the band went and recorded it at a place called Saltley Music Workshop,
Okay.
which is an area of Birmingham.
Yeah.
And the song was basically, because there was high unemployment at the time.
Yeah.
We had a lot of rioting going on, but there was high unemployment. 3 million unemployed was heavy.
Yeah.
Back then,
Yeah.
and
for sure.
Wasn't good socially for the Black community.
Yeah.
So, that's what the song was aimed at.
Wow.
Trying to get people back into work.
And now, after that song was played, my understanding is, why I said that really kind of broke Musical Youth is because my understanding is that's what got you the record contract with MCA Records, which is or now Universal Records, but at the time was MCA, and that was what precipitated. I'll let you explain this, but that was what led to Dennis Seaton suddenly coming in and taking the very big reins.
Not quite that easy. Not quite that easy. So what happened was, again, John Peel was an influential radio DJ in this country, never to be seen again. The amount of 80s artists that was signed off the back of being played on or doing a John Peel session.
Wow.
It's a who's who of the 80s.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they played the single. There's a guy at A&R Records at the time named Charlie Eyre. He heard it. He got in touch with, at the time, Tony Owens was looking after the band with Fred.
Right.
So I knew all these people because obviously hanging around with Junior and Patrick and Michael and Cap, I got to know the names. And basically, he was moving from A&M Records to be head of A&R for MCA Records.
I see.
So he got in touch. And he then convinced his then MD to go and see the band doing a gig at the General Wolf. Now, the General Wolf is in Coventry, where the Specials were, and Selector. That's where they play.
One of the Specials just passed away.
Terry last week. Yeah, we lost Terry last week.
Yeah.
God rest his soul. And he went down there and he saw Fred singing lead.
Yeah.
That was Stuart Watson was the MD, and asked, look, the band's brilliant, but is there any way we could get a younger person to sing lead? And that's
because the band is called Musical Youth, and you can't have an old guy singing lead.
Well, it's funny now that I'm 55 and I'm older than Fred when Fred was singing lead.
So it doesn't feel good to hear that necessarily. Listen, I'm getting older. I'm getting older too, Dennis. So I
that's fine. My cousin Noah says I'm probably one of the only 3 people now alive that can actually still claim to be a youth.
Now, how hard was it, if you know? I know you can't speak for Freddie Sr., but how hard was it for him to step down as lead singer and for him to agree to allow you to take over?
Well, let's put it this way. I don't think he was very happy, but as it happens, he had to guide me into it. It wasn't a case of you move aside and I step in. It wasn't like that, because I'd never done any live work before. So rehearsals, first and foremost, the band had already been on the road for at least 18 months.
Yeah.
And the very first live gig I ever saw was Musical Youth supporting the Beat in Birmingham.
Wow.
Okay. And so you can imagine. So then I've got to join and I've got to catch up.
Yeah.
So he catch up.
So even though, you became the lead singer, there's no question that the head of the band still remained, even though he was in the background, Freddie Waite Sr. Is that true?
Yeah, he just rehearsed the band, basically.
Yeah.
And he made sure that we were playing our instruments to the best of our ability. And he just said, look, these are the songs you're going to sing. And what he did was, the transition was he'd sing part of the set and I'd learn part of my set of songs and we'd amalgamate them. And eventually what happened was he kind of moved out and I stepped in.
Yeah. And now, did he remain involved, though, even when you were firmly planted as the lead singer? Did he remain involved? He remained involved with the band, still involved in writing the song, some of the songs. And did he tour with the band too?
Not always. It was only the last tour that we did in Jamaica that he was there, really.
Okay. Yeah, I'm certainly going to ask about that, because I know it was a kind of an unfortunate. It ended up unfortunate. I have a few questions to ask about that. Now,
that's fine. You can ask away.
Yeah. Now, well, thank you. And now, in 1982, when you finally you guys were signed to the record label, and you were the lead singer, and the Youth of Today album. I mean, this album comes out, and it is so wildly popular. I mean, it features several hit songs, like there's the track Heartbreaker, there's the title track, The Youth of Today, there's Never Gonna Give You Up, and then of course we have to come back to it, there's the iconic song Pass the Dutchie, which is an adaptation of the famous Mighty Diamond song, which many of the reggae fans, all of the reggae fans, I would hazard to guess, know, Pass the Coochie. Now, Dennis, before we delve into some of these massive hits, these songs are great. I mean, I've been listening to them, like I said, basically on a loop. And I think it's important to reflect, though, before we dig into some of the lyrics and some of the music, is just to reflect for a moment how wildly famous Musical Youth became. And I know that you know this. If Michael were here, I'd tell him I know he knows this. But I don't know that I want to make sure that everyone who later reads the transcript of this interview, or who later watches this, can can just understand how famous you guys were. And if it's okay, the way I would like to do it is just confirm with you several of the milestones and facts, because you can read a lot of things online, and you can never, and you know, not all of them are true, as you know, right?
Yeah.
And so let me just see if I have some of these things correct. Now, the first thing I want to make sure is correct is that the song Pass the Dutchie itself, I've read different places. I'm not sure it matters, but I've read that it sold either 5 million or 4 million. Either way, it's a giant, giant number. In today's terms, you can't even imagine so many sales.
So it was number 5 in the world for one of the top selling singles of the year. So it was over 5 million singles.
Wow.
Worldwide.
And it reached number 1 in the UK. It reached number 1 in Canada and several other countries too, correct?
Yes.
And I believe, and I also read that Pass the Dutchie was number 1 on the UK charts for close to 3 weeks in a row.
3 weeks, exactly.
Okay. Now, I mean, you guys performed on a giant show. Not everyone understands how giant this is, but in the UK, the Top of the Pops.
Yeah.
And you also, I mean, now people in the United States will understand this. You performed live on Saturday Night Live, true?
Yes, we did. Yes. With
okay.
Joan Rivers.
Do you remember, I have to ask, I wasn't get a chance to figure this out myself, but do you remember who was the actor who hosted Saturday Night Live? Who was
Joan Rivers hosted. It was Joan Rivers.
Joan Rivers. Holy smokes. Did you guys meet Joan Rivers?
Yes, we met Joan, said hello.
And
I'm
did
sure
she
there must be a photo somewhere?
Was she a musical Youth fan?
I don't know. Listen, Stephen, when we used to go to radios, TV shows, you know, they were unarmed by the.
But that's just such an amazing thing. How do you guys go back to school after? How do you go back to Duddiston and you're walking around the hallways? I've just been on the Top of the Pops. I've been on Saturday Night Live. You have girls. I'm sure there's women. So just explain to me how it works as a teenager.
So,
how do you keep your head on straight?
Okay, so if you think about it, Saturday Night Live wasn't shown here.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's true.
Saturday Night Live was big in America.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we also was being played on MTV.
Yeah.
For Black people, you know, we actually went in the studios and did an interview with MTV before Michael Jackson and it's only as we look back retrospectively that they realized, hold on, there wasn't any Black artists on MTV in 1983 coming into the studio. This was before Yo MTV Raps and all that. This was before all that. It was just being played and played without even the record company having to push it. Michael Jackson's company.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy that you mentioned that. Because certainly that was one of the things I wanted to confirm about you guys being on MTV and that video. I just want to, this video of you guys, just to describe it a minute. It's made by Don Letts.
Yes.
And the band is filmed. You guys are young and you're being chased by a truancy officer by the Thames, by the Thames River. And and it culminates in this hilarious, and I don't know if you know that my background, I may have told you, but I'm an attorney. I'm an attorney, so when I suddenly see you guys in court and the barristers have their wigs and the sound box is being introduced as an exhibit. Oh my gosh. My wife and I we watched it last night, and we were even still, as many times as we watch it, we still want to watch it more.
It's innocent. It is innocent. To be fair, it's innocent.
Yeah.
And that was all Don's thinking, because we'd previously done a video for Youth of Today with Don before we got signed.
Yeah.
So he carried that theme over. So if you look at the first 2 videos, Pass the Dutchie, Youth of Today, we still got the same truancy officer following us around.
It's amazing. Now, you guys still? I'm just curious because I think he just may have released an album, Don Letts.
He has indeed.
Are you in touch with him still?
Yes, I'm still in touch with Don. I can't even get him now. He's
Yeah.
always on the train or in America or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
Now, and then Musical Youth, as I was saying, you guys were so big and so popular after
yeah.
that Youth of Today album, and with Past the Dutchie especially, the band then received a Grammy nomination for
Yes.
Best New Band, I believe,
New
um,
artist.
Best New Artist. And what was that like to receive that nomination? I mean, there's this amazing picture that you sent to me, Dennis, that I'm
Mhm.
sure my editors may publish with the interview. That it shows. I believe it's a picture of Michael with
Yeah.
Paul McCartney
Yeah.
and Michael Jackson, and they're in the
Yeah.
photo. It's just a wicked photo, and it's a visual reminder of how you guys had skyrocketed to fame at that point. What was it like to be there that night at the Grammys?
Well, first and foremost, that photo that's with Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney and Linda McCartney and Junior and Michael. That was in England. That was at the English. That was that was
Oh,
what's called the Brit Awards.
oh, I'm so
Yeah.
happy you told me that. I assumed it was at the Grammys.
No. So what
Oh,
had happened was um, when we got the nomination, I don't think I knew how big it was, but I don't think the rest of the and people around the band knew how big it was.
yeah,
And you got to put this in context, Steve. In so much as to be nominated as a best new art, best newcomers, yeah. But the kind of music we were playing,
yeah.
reggae wasn't big in America. It was
No,
just like Bob. Bob was the only person they knew.
yeah.
So you can imagine a reggae artist, reggae band, getting nominated for best newcomers in a time when reggae wasn't recognized in the Grammys.
It's Dennis. I mean, I hear you saying this, and I'm glad you're highlighting it because I think it's one of the things that you have to understand as a music historian to
Yeah,
understand that musical youth doesn't get quite the respect that it should because
sometimes. Yeah,
frankly, what you're saying is right on point, Dennis.
yeah,
And now my understanding is later on when you were in Los Angeles and you were working on the second studio album called
yeah,
Different Style,
yeah.
that Michael Jackson actually invited Musical Youth over to his house in Inglewood. I believe that you met Michael's pet chimp and his snake muscles and you hung
Yeah.
out for the day. What can you tell me about that experience?
Okay, so now you go back to the photo,
Yeah.
right? So Michael meets our Michael, keyboard
Yep.
Michael Jr. meets Michael Jackson at the Brit Awards, which is the British version of the Grammys.
Yeah.
And Michael says to him, look, here's my number. When you come to LA, call me. So he's like, okay. So we're doing the second album. We've flown in from Japan. I'll give it all. We've flown in from Japan. And so we hadn't started recording yet. We're down at Lionshare Studios in LA. Anyway, so Michael calls Michael Jackson's answering service. Now, to
Holy
us, an
cow.
answering service is answer machine. This is real people picking up the phone.
Wow.
Right? So then after a couple of tries, we thought, oh, no. Then we get a call at where we were staying at in Beverly Hills. Got Mr. Jackson on the phone for you. Really? So, so
What a message. Oh my
our Michael takes the call and he's
holy
all
cow.
excited. And if Michael was here, he'd tell you because the way he was acting, wow, he's all excited. I mean, you got to understand, Michael's 14 at the time. 14, yes, 14. So then
Dennis,
he says,
I would have done a moonwalk myself. Like, go
he
ahead,
said, he
Yeah.
says, he says, Dennis is here. Do you want to speak to him? I said, yeah. So I get on the phone. Hi, Michael. And he said, hi, how are you doing? I'm like, wow. Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, it was like,
And he invites you over to his house.
yeah, we go over to his house in Encino, the family house in Encino. So we'd already met, I mean, back from that, we'd already met Jermaine at a
Yeah.
TV show in England.
Okay.
And Jermaine must have gone back and said, look, them guys are cool. We hope.
Wow.
And then, obviously it's banded around that this is the British answer to the Jackson 5 and blah, blah, blah. Not the fact that we're playing reggae.
Now I have to I have to ask. I mean I've read enough. Literally, I think almost all of the Musical Youth interviews that there could be out there. I hope before today. And it seemed odd to me that no one has asked you this question. And I think it's good just for historical purposes, just to put it to rest. because certainly someone will think of it, which is, you know, we all know that there were accusations leveled against Michael Jackson for various things involving children. And I just want to ask you, can you just put it to rest? Did you, when musical youth as young lads, and I think it's important to note this, were invited to Michael Jackson's house, hung out with Michael Jackson, did anything at all inappropriate occur at all?
No, and I can tell you for a fact that all the rumors just rubbish, and I'll tell you why. I can stand here as a father of 4, and tell you that everybody was at the house. So Janet, Latoya, Marlon, Randy, Tito, Jermaine, Jackie.
Wow.
All the 3 T's.
Yeah.
The maids.
Yeah.
And remember, Michael took us all around the house to every room in the house, and he never ever said, "Don't go in there, don't go in there." I mean, I don't know what Neverland was like, but I can tell you that I never for once thought this man's a paedophile. And even when I heard it and people was trying to say it, and I was looking at it and I thought, and I've done my research on him as well.
Yeah.
You know, listened to books and read books on him, having met the man. So you get a feel when you go to somebody's house and they don't say any of the doors are locked. It's all open house.
Yep.
I went to Janet's room, Latoya's room, Michael's room. I hung out in Michael's room. His neighbors were there all the time.
Yeah.
You know? So it's just, listen,
well, I'm glad.
People like to make money off people because they, you know, it's easier to say something and get paid. Because I was offered money to say something and I wouldn't take it.
Wow. Well, he certainly never was convicted in a court of law, and we must make sure that's said. And I'm glad to just ask you, because I'm surprised that no one had, and I'm glad that for the musical record that the people can know about that. Now, like I said, you know, to dig into it a little bit, I guess I just wanted to first ask, do you remember, and now I'm getting into the album of the Youth of Today, which is, do you remember who first came up with the idea for musical youth to adapt the legendary Mighty Diamond song past the Coochie? Whose idea was it to even you know, look at that song and adapt it?
Right. First and foremost, what we used to do was listen to the reggae charts in the UK. Yeah. And Fred would have us in rehearsals in his living room, and because we couldn't play the instruments because it was too noisy. But a cappella wise, guitar, keyboard, bass, and vocals. So we'd listen to the reggae charts. Past the Dutchie was #1 in 1981. Right. So we pulled it into our set because we used to do covers, and we pulled it into our set. And when we pulled it into our set, it was just because it was #1 reggae song. But here's what happened. We were signed to MCA, as you know, and we were doing a show supporting Culture Club.
Right.
Culture Club already signed to Virgin, but Virgin didn't know what to do with this artist. Anyway, we go and support Culture Club at the biggest gay club in London in 1981.
What was that? What was that called?
Heaven.
Wow. Heaven. Okay.
We didn't know it was a gay club. I didn't know until we got there. I mean, I'm 15, for goodness sake.
Right.
So 14. I wasn't even 15. 14. And so we come to the end. We always played the #1 reggae song at the end. So we come, this place is 3,000 people rammed in this place. We come, and Charlie A, the A&R guy's there. So we play past the Dutchie. Yeah. And when we were rehearsing it, Fred actually said, look, is there anything else we could add to the song to give it a little, you know, Calvin something to do? And that's when we came up with This Generation Rules the Nation with version. Obviously, you know, U-Roy's great line. Now, what had happened was, because the reaction of the crowd, they went absolutely nuts.
So you knew that was a good addition.
Well, we didn't know. It was the reaction of the A&R guy. He said, look, when we finished playing, he said, listen, this song past the Coochie, I just saw the reaction. Is there any way you could change the lyric? And we're like, What do you mean? He said, because the reaction was just absolutely phenomenal.
Wow.
We said, okay. And back then, we used to demo albums for the record company.
Yeah.
Their marketing teams and stuff. So we went in the studio to demo the first album, Youth of Today, which you heard. And we did two recordings. So the first one was past the Dutchie. Right. Sorry, past the Cutchie.
Past the Cutchie.
And then we sang it, recorded it, because we'd been rehearsing 7 days a week, laying down the songs.
You knew it. Yeah, you knew it.
Easy. We knew them inside out, back to front. Anyway, so then we go into rehearsal, we go into the control room, and we're sitting there, we're going, what are we going to change these lyrics to? And Tony Owens then says, well, I'm going to get, there's some food from the Dutch pub, blah, blah. What? Dutchie. And I can remember it like yesterday.
Now, I'm sorry, now, Tony Owens.
Tony Owens was managing the band at the time.
And so it's Tony Owens who, it's important to know this. He's the one who first clicked that Dutchie, he came up with that, the Dutchie. He said, hey, we should think about this.
There's some food in the Dutch pot.
Wow, okay. Because that's been said before. And then the band then goes on to change the doleful refrain of how does it feel when you've got no herb to how does it feel when you've got no food.
That's it.
And it significantly shifts the focus of the song to a song about poverty and down-pression, which kind of worked, as we were talking about politicals, it worked so well. It worked so well, with the band, the theme of that song to shift it in that way.
Well, it was more logical, Steve, because we couldn't be, we couldn't be singing "How Does It Feel When You Got No Herb." We knew what we were singing about.
Yes.
You got a 10-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, and two 14-year-olds. What the heck are they going to be singing about herbs for?
Right. And now, I mean, but it's so interesting because, as I say, the song, when you suddenly becomes, how does it feel when you've got no food? Yeah. And even though it's actually quite sad, it's actually, what's interesting to me about the song, and I would make the same argument about the track Youth of Today, is that both those tracks to me, I listen to them a lot, Dennis, and both those tracks are very uplifting tracks, but at the same time, they're sufferers songs because they're talking about poverty.
Yeah, because we were from working class backgrounds. Yeah, but subconsciously we wrote these songs. It wasn't from a standpoint that, I know Patrick and Junior went without food and many a night. My mum always made sure we had food on the table, and Michael and Calvin's mum and dad always made sure. But I know Patrick and Junior, they went without food some nights. So, it's not that we sang it in that way, in so much as we've never had no food. It was a logical step. You're passing a Dutch pot that's full of food, and then we're passing it to the left. So how does it feel when you got no food?
And I hear you, and I think one of the things that makes you guys, fit so well into the pantheon of great reggae artists, frankly, is your ability to express poverty in still a joyful, uplifting way. It's such an amazing, and the Mighty Diamonds, the same. When I interviewed them, they have the same ability to transform these songs, and even though they're singing about very sorrowful subjects, to still be uplifting about it is quite a gift. Now, I think it's fair to say, as you said, that everyone the world over, including you guys yourself, you knew what you were singing about, and everyone knows what what you guys were singing. And now, one giant recent pop cultural example of this happened on the Netflix. You know where I'm going with this, on the Netflix show Stranger Things. Which is a giant blockbuster show. And they played Past the Dutchie in scenes featuring a pot-smoking character named Argyle when things got very tense. And they're clearly drawing, pardon the pun, but they were clearly drawing on the song's association with herb, Dennis. So I have to ask this. at the time you guys were singing and making the song and making it world famous, did anyone now if you don't want to answer this, you don't have to. But I just
can.
want to was anyone in the band at that time smoking herb when you guys were busy making this a world famous song?
No, I can categorically tell you no, we weren't. But the reason why, and I
Yeah,
can tell you the reason why,
yeah.
the Americans took it to another level. Your countrymen,
Wow.
because when they heard about cooking pot, yeah, we're singing about cooking pot, cooking a
Right.
cooking pot.
Right.
They literally thought we were talking about cooking
Right.
pot. So that's where it took on a whole the legs of its own. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Now, you know, this now, but now I do want to just ask too, though, as a corollary question, which
Yeah.
is because you guys would later record 2 music videos in Jamaica, and you later
Yes.
then also did go to Jamaica, you know, you toured in Jamaica. Even still, then, can you categorically say you still no one in the band was smoking the Dutchie?
Now, bearing in mind, by the time I'd got to Jamaica, I was 18.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd had a little touch.
Okay, so things.
I can't vouch for anybody else.
And so, okay, so fair enough, and thank you for that. Now, also, I guess I want to, you know, I think because of that, as I mentioned, how it became such big news. You know, even the dance hall magazine in Jamaica
Yes.
ran a column, noting, that Stranger Things had played this song, and I think they noted also, as you mentioned, that that the adaptation included, sampling lyrics from U-Roy's "Rule
Yeah,
the Nation," about music being the food of life,
that's
and
right.
and I think what's very interesting is that now, just about a month ago, literally about a month ago, there was an article in AmericanSongwriter.com. I
Yeah.
don't know if you know about this article, and they noted also, quote, I want to quote from the article, they said, keeping to the flow of the chorus and the original melody of the song, the entire second half of the song features new lyrics. And the new lyrics, of course, it's really the rapping by Kelvin.
Yeah.
And he sings, now me say, listen to the drummer, me say, listen to the bass, give me a little music, make me wind up me waist. And
Yeah.
also he then says, you play it on the radio, and some
Yeah.
say we are go hear it on the stereo, and so me know we are go play it on the disco.
Yeah.
And so can you recall, Dennis,
Yeah.
how in the studio these additional, you mentioned, the intro and how you used the U-Roy intro, but how did you guys come up with this? Who created these lyrics, these brilliant lyrics that Kelvin raps?
It was all of us. It was mainly Junior and myself because we were the oldest.
Yeah.
And because we were playing it live all the time, these were ad libs that Calvin would throw in there. So
Wow.
obviously translated. And the way you hear the single, the 7-inch single, is not how we recorded the track.
Wow.
We actually recorded the track. If you hear the full 12-inch version, that's us playing all the way through.
Wow.
And then the producer then slices, because we weren't professional enough to understand what he was trying to get across. Yeah. Because remember, we'd rehearsed this stuff. So we were stuck in the way we played it. So what he did was he put a click, Junior played to a click, and then wherever he spliced was in time. Yeah.
I only can really follow what you're saying, Dennis, because of being in the studio with scientists. Do I understand what it is that you're describing?
Well, it's cut and paste now, isn't it, on computers?
Yeah, now, yeah, with the Pro Tools. Yeah,
Well, not even Pro. I mean, anything, cut and
yeah,
paste.
yeah.
We literally, I was there in the studio when Pete Hammond, who was the engineer, was running the 1/4-inch tape, marking it, cutting it. And I was looking at him thinking, what the heck's he doing? What's he doing?
Wow,
And
wow,
then we only heard it after.
that's so old school. Now, before today's interview,
Yeah.
I passed on to you, Dennis,
That's right.
an interview that I did with Lloyd Judge Ferguson, the last living legendary member of the Mighty Diamonds. And
Yes.
admittedly, as I've told you, admittedly, this was when I was merely familiar with Musical Youth and Pass the Dutchie, and I wasn't yet, to be honest, I wasn't yet, as I am now, a giant Musical Youth fan, like a groupie, right? And so you know, I this was before that, and I also hadn't personally studied the first two Musical Youth albums at the time that I'd interviewed Judge, and I had not also really looked at some of these adaptive changes, as I've just been mentioning, that were made to the song. Now, in my interview this past summer with Judge, I asked Judge for his thoughts, you know, given that background, though I didn't know a lot of what I just mentioned, about an article that I had read a few years back, which kind of mentioned some of the legal copyright and intellectual property disputes that came about with Pass the Dutchie. And in the article, it noted that you, Dennis, that you had said, you were quoted, and you said that you won't be entirely satisfied until the band receives its full songwriting credit for Pass the Dutchie. And I just want to, before you respond, just tell you what, you know, I know you know, but just to put it on the record, Judge's response to my question about Musical Youth's Pass the Dutchie and the adaptation of the Diamonds song was that Pass the Coochie, he said, this is to quote Judge, that Pass the Coochie was entirely a Diamond song. Me and Bunny Diamonds wrote that song. Musical Youth has nothing to do with writing that song. Now, he acknowledged that Tony Owens and both MCA and Tony Owens called him, you know, to ask if you guys could cover the song. And he also acknowledged that key change from Coochie to Dutchie, even though we didn't kind of get into any of the other adaptive changes, mostly because I didn't know about them. You know, now, can you, Michael, I'm sorry, can you, Dennis, because I was going to ask both of you, but I'm going to, you have to, like I said, you have to answer all Michael's questions too.
Michael's good.
Yeah, can you please, Dennis, discuss what was at the heart of the lawsuit that you filed against your former lawyers about the songwriting credits that you think, you know, that you guys were due, and given all that we've just discussed?
Okay, so firstly, we know that Jackie Mittoo and Leroy Sibbles wrote Full Up because Jackie was around the band, you know, and then the lyrics was added to Full Up by the Diamonds.
Yeah,
they put their lyrics on it. Now, what had happened was we'd found out. Now, we'd gone back to our lawyer. Remember, he was representing us. He was head of firm, to ask him some questions about some documentation that had come back our way in trying to chase our royalties from MCA.
Yeah.
What we found out was that all the publishers were about to sue each other.
Wow.
Okay. Now this is written. They were about to sue each other over the song rights, because you know what Jamaica was like back then.
Yeah. The song rights to Pass the Coochie.
Dutchie, right.
Yeah.
And we've got it in black and white that it actually says all of these agree that Pass the Dutchie should be treated as a separate entity.
Wow.
I never ever said, and it probably didn't come across this way, but what I was trying to get across was we should have got a little piece. In fact, we got nothing.
Wow.
And our lawyer didn't even the meeting was held in his offices.
Yeah. Now, when you say, just to be clear, because I want to make sure I understand, you're saying that you should have gotten a piece of the royalties of the songwriting for Pass the Dutchie, which is your adaptation.
That's right.
And right. And now, and let me say, because I have evolved, I mentioned to you before the interview, I've evolved in my thinking about this, and as an attorney, I really kind of see this argument that you guys had, and I'm kind of baffled because when we think about, especially when you think about the way that songs are constantly taken from somebody else in Jamaica, changed a little bit, and suddenly it is copyrighted and protected as a new song. And
That's right.
so it is kind of baffling to me, and I do kind of feel the pain of musical youth not having received this copyright protection.
But Stephen,
Yeah.
if you had it, if you got it in black and white, that all of the 11 publishers agree
Yeah.
that Pastor Dutchie is a separate entity, because remember, until Pastor Dutchie, Pastor Cutchie is a big reggae song. Don't get me wrong, was big.
Right.
But the interest in Cutchie was heightened by Dutchie.
I think there's no doubt about that. Yeah. I think there's no doubt about that. And I think it's a very interesting
But can I just interject there, Steve?
Yeah, please.
We didn't just, we spent money. We got a musicologist to go through the song, note by note, word by word, lyric by lyric, the key changes. He worked out there was 47 differences between Cutchie and Dutchie.
Holy cow. I would love to see that. I would love, Dennis, if we had that lawyer's work, I would.
No, it's not the lawyer, it's the musicologist. I've got his written statement, because that's
I'm gonna ask you, I'm gonna remind you of this, Dennis, because I'm gonna stay in touch with you, of course. Because I'm hoping that you guys will make it out here to LA, and I'll be able to see you guys.
I'll be out there next year. Don't you worry.
And so I'll be seeing you, hopefully performing. But I would love to see that, and maybe even if it's okay, we'll have to talk about it. But maybe even publish that document that the musicologist, created.
My brother was his name.
Yeah,
very renowned. He'd done this case before. And that was the basis of our claim. So when we went to the lawyer, our lawyer, who was representing us, and he then called his lawyers, well, that certainly threw up a red flag for me, because he never said, come in and sit down, let's discuss it.
Right.
Which I find kind of strange. You represented us. I'm asking you a question. So he doesn't want to incriminate himself. So then we have to issue writs.
Crazy.
To get them to come out and talk to us.
Crazy.
Now, we're minors. We're minors. It's only as adults that we find all this out. And this is we never got paid by Universal for 18 years. Yeah. Not just for all of the stuff, not just Dutchie.
I read about this in researching the band, about how you had to track down, and I believe some of it what started it, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe it was just part and parcel, was that one of your former managers happened to watch the wedding singer on an airplane and called you guys up and said, hey, I'm sure you received a big check because your song was played in this very highly rated movie at the time. And you guys, my understanding, were like, what?
That was me. So it was my manager, a guy named Dave Morgan.
Wow.
And bearing in mind that Dave and I worked together, I was living in Los Angeles for a year when I was 21.
Yeah.
And he never even noticed at the time, right? But it's only that, I'd called Universal, because they were Universal now, and I'd phoned them up, and the lady at reception said, there's no money. And I didn't ask her about money. I said, I didn't ask you about money. I wasn't phoning you about money because I didn't think there was any money there.
Wow.
I just wanted information about what was happening with the masters.
Yeah.
So then he contacts me and says, well, you should have a check. I said, what are you on about? Check. I said, you've worked with me. You managed me. What are you on about? Right? And he said, well, your song's in The Wedding Singer. I said, yeah, we know that. And it was in Scooby-Doo. So he said, well, you should have a check. So anyway, he went back and he was in touch with the head of Universal.
Wow.
And he knocked on the door, and all of a sudden, from going to having no money, they pay us some money. And I'm looking at it going, hold on a minute. How long's this money been there? Because I was told there's no money, right?
And it really could have made a difference for the band.
Of course.
Right? And some of the members, if you guys had gotten those royalty checks early, much more early, not 18 years later, and not back pay. And I understand that you didn't even get the full money because of statutes of limitations.
You got it. So now think about this. Remember, it's the same lawyer that was representing us that knew all this. He's a music lawyer. We're not.
Yeah.
We're relying on him
Such a shame.
and Tony Owens, you know.
Yeah.
So Tony Owens didn't come and help us in the claim. It
Wow.
was myself, Michael, and Calvin driving it. And we had to get Patrick, well, Patrick had passed away. We had to get Junior's signature and his mom's signature for them to talk to us about it. So you can imagine, you go from a conversation where they're going, there's no money, and all of a sudden they make a payment, and you're like, well, where's this come from? And at that time, Steve, I was running a car rental company. I
Yeah.
owned a car rental company. So I'm looking at it going, well, hold on a minute. This ain't right. And in
Oh
the end,
man.
I had to tell Universal, I don't care how long this takes, because I'm at this position in my life in spite of your money, not because of your money.
Yeah, yeah, wow, yeah.
And
Exactly.
£1 million doesn't buy you a lot of cars.
Wow. I mean, I'm so disheartened to hear, you know, the music industry scientist is often telling me how corrupt and how the devils and vampires, you know,
Yep.
and the more I interview people, the more I
Well,
see examples of it. Now, I want to just to mention though, you know, just to put past the Dutchie aside for just a moment, because
yes.
because personally, I think that that entire Youth of Today album is so awesome. And I absolutely love, for example, songs like Blind Boy, Children of Zion,
Yep.
which shows an undeniable kind of Rasta and roots influence.
Yes.
And then the same is true for Young Generation, you know, um,
Yep.
Kelvin raps Me Carry Rasta Drum in that song,
Yep.
right? And the album's title track, I mean, all these songs are so righteous and conscious, and they stand up. I would argue they stand up even today. And my understanding is, and I just wanted to ask you though about some of these songs that I just recited. You know, these songs were written by musical youth for that first album with some
Yep.
assistance from Freddie Waite Sr. Can you
Yes.
describe how that songwriting process, did you guys were all together in the studio creating these songs?
It was in rehearsals.
In rehearsals, yeah.
So, you know, I mean, from the very first rehearsal I ever did with the band, we wrote a song, which
Wow.
was a song called Girl. So then what we did, all the B-sides for the singles were songs written by the band, because back then, as you know, whatever the A-side sold, the B-side sold.
True.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you listen to Please Give Love a Chance, that's us. Yeah. That's just us in our raw form.
Nice.
And they sweetened it with Dutchie, and you know, but then you listen to all the B-sides and they all have they're all about youth and conscious and us growing up, innocence. You know, black boy, can't you see you're committing yourself on the street? That was us. That was us.
It's so this song. That's such a wicked song. I hope everyone listens to. Now, I mentioned how much I also love the title track of Youth of Today. And I want to make sure I know this. This is so great sometimes when I talk to people, and you want to make sure that you understand their lyrics like to the core. And so I'm so happy and blessed to be able to ask you this, because I've listened to this so many times. And you know, like when you guys are singing the Youths of Today, and you say, you know, youths of today, we've got a lot to say. We're under heavy manners, yeah. And let me make sure I understand. Heavy manners. Because if you don't live in the UK and you don't grow up in that community, you may not be sure. Now, I can only induce that it means like a stress, an economic and a community stress. What is heavy manners? How would
Heavy
you
manners
describe
means our parents put us under control.
Nice.
If we don't behave ourselves, right?
The parents have got you under control.
The video explains it, but I went downtown to buy a little bike.
Yep.
The price of the bike made me lose beside this at judgment time, because I wanted a bike, but it was too much for my parents to buy.
Oh man.
You know.
And that's the economic stress, but I just wanted to make sure that, and that was something, you know.
Heavy manners means our parents would just down on us like a ton of bricks.
Wow. I love the song.
So
the song so much, because it really like Dutchie, like Past the Dutchie, expresses that kind of gritty poverty that people are living through you know, the high unemployment, as we mentioned, rate, and the high prices, as you just said, for even things like musical instruments,
Yes.
right? You know, but also in addition to being a song about, you know, this economic stress, and being under heavy manners of parents, it's from the opening verse about how the youth of today have a lot to say. It's our life, it's our future, it's our future. And it really makes it also a song about youth empowerment, Dennis.
Yes.
And one that could be, I would just make the suggestion, seized upon today for people, the youth who are arguing about climate control and global warming. I mean, and the same is true, Dennis, for Children of Zion, because you're inviting the youth of the world to unite.
Yeah,
right?
Because our whole ethos was to encourage other youth to play music. That was the ethos of the band. We wanted to encourage other music, you know, kids who played, encourage. Nice. Remember I said at the beginning, we never set out to have a #1 selling single. That wasn't the philosophy of the band. That wasn't the ethos of the band. The ethos of the band was, if we can do it, you can do it. You know, that was the ethos of the band. And the band, I've had this discussion with Michael, and the reason why there's never been another musical youth is because there can't be another musical, because it was so organic. And the tentacles run deep. They're 40 years deep now. I've been performing for 50 years in my life.
That's unbelievable to think about, because you're still, like you said, such a young man.
Well, I know. I look back at the 80s and I go, wow, all them people who are out clubbing, and I couldn't go to no clubs.
No, I hear you on that one. Now, I also dig, you know, as I told you, many of the tracks on Different Style, the sophomore musical youth album, and sadly, that was the last studio album together that you guys released in 1983. You know, before you and Michael would later reunite. Now that second album, Different Style, it received a lot of criticism, and it was nowhere near as successful commercially as Youth of Today was. And the criticism seems to have been, let me know if you think this is accurate. The criticism seems to have been that the sound had veered away from reggae and into R&B, and somehow the musical youth sound had became watered down as a result. Do you think that was, is that an accurate portrayal of the criticism?
Almost.
Okay.
Because not all of this, you know, 07, classic, Desmond Dekker.
Yeah.
John Oates, Tell Me Why.
Yeah. Yeah, these are awesome covers.
Yeah. 16. You know, the lyrics were written by Lamont Dozier.
16, I mean, I'm 16. I'm like a bullet straight to your heart.
That's Lamont Dozier.
That's
so Lamont
wicked.
Dozier. Holland Dozier, Holland. That's Lamont Dozier's lyrics.
It's so wicked.
And the vocals were sang by, if you get the master, original vocals were sang by Irene Cara.
Wow. Yeah.
But her record company, because she just won the Grammy for best female vocal,
who recently passed away.
He did last month.
From the Star of Fame. Yeah.
That's right. We actually performed that song with her once. The day after the Grammy, she won the Grammy. I was 17. She came and sang her part on stage with us at the Beverly Hills Theater.
Incredible! Wow.
1984. Yeah, March 2nd, 1984.
Incredible.
But then we had to change it to Jodie Watley from Shalimar. She sang. Her vocals is what you hear.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, like I say, I'm 16 and I'm a bullet in your heart. I don't think anyone who hears that could ever forget the line. And I also want to ask, because on Different Style again, the song I really love, I'm going to be honest with you, maybe most of all, on the second album, is the song "What You Talking About." Because first of all, we have to say, this song was written, correct me if I'm wrong, written for musical youth by, I have to pause, for effect, we just paused. The song was written for musical youth by Stevie Wonder. Is that accurate?
That's 100% correct.
Can you please explain how that could have happened?
Right. So we've gone down to KJLH, which is Stevie's station in LA. And one of the ladies there, press officers, says, "Look, do you want to meet Stevie?" Come on. Who doesn't want to meet Stevie? So we're up at we're staying in Beverly Hills now.
Yeah.
Good night. Rock star business. But anyway, 3:00 in the morning, we get the call. Stevie's in the studio. Do you want to come down? 3:00 in the morning,
Unbelievable.
So we all get up bleary-eyed. We go down to Wonderland. Stevie's there.
Unbelievable.
And he says, you guys are so cool. Because he's trying to pick up on all the accents, you see. Because obviously we were Brummies. So
yeah.
I mean, mine's toned down now. But back then, it must have been like, what? Yeah. Anyway, so Steve says, "Look, I'll play you at air hockey. If you win, I've got a song for you."
Unbelievable.
Anyway, so in fact, he had 2 songs for us. What You're Talking About was the first one, and the second one was See You Later. But because What You're Talking About lent itself to that reggae, kind of calypso beat, we went and recorded What You're Talking About. He wanted to produce it, but it was no time for him to produce it because Stevie took forever. And they didn't have forever.
Yeah, they had to get it out. Yeah.
So we just recorded it, and I went and recorded it myself with Stevie, producing it. That was on my solo album. But for this one, yeah, it lent itself so great. I mean, he told us that he did it in Jamaica when he was out there, and Rico Rodriguez went and recorded What You're Talking About, so you don't like the jungle beat.
Anybody who loves reggae has to immediately go listen to that tune, What You Talk About, especially as the entire premise of that hilarious Wicked song is, how can you not love the reggae beat?
Exactly. Exactly.
Now this is a loaded question, but my understanding from researching musical youth is that there are, Dennis, a couple of contributing factors that led to musical youth disbanding and breaking up just after 3 years in 1985. And so I just want to mention to you what I understand, and you can tell me where I've gone wrong or what I've got right.
Probably my interview anyway, or Michael's.
well, so I pulled this from a number of different sources, though. And in fact, and I will say there's a lot that's been done on music. There are some documentaries that are out there that,
right.
And people can watch these things. But what I understand is that the reason why you guys ended up breaking up was because of the poor critical reception to that different style album, and then also there was an ill-fated recording with Eddie Grant on a widely panned song that was called "Let's Go to the Moon." I have to say that's not my favorite musical.
Not my favorite.
I googled it up. So
not my favorite either.
Right, and then also, and this is more serious, and this is actually a serious thing, which is that there was a disastrous tour of the Caribbean that musical youth was essentially, what I understand, forced to go on by the management of the band, I guess Tony Owens and company, even though Patrick had basically been hospitalized for using some kind of drug before the tour, and even though he had been hospitalized, they said, no, you still have to go to the Caribbean. And this was 1985, and it turned out to all be disastrous. And this is what I understand, these kind of combining things kind of led to the band and you making the decision as the lead singer to leave the band. Do I have any of this right?
That's right. There was some mitigating factors.
Yeah.
So the first things first, we were released by Universal.
Yeah.
What people don't realize is when Universal, it was MCA. When MCA let us go.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why there wasn't much, it's classed as it wasn't much success. The American arm didn't know how to deal with the reggae.
Yeah.
So there was a big American influence on it. So they didn't know how to deal with it. And then they went and signed Candy Girl, New Edition.
Oh,
so that just, they signed New Edition. And people get us confused, mixed up with them. I don't know how. Anyway, they released us, paid us off. Now, if we owed them money, they wouldn't have paid us off. We didn't notice that. Anyway, so that was one thing. Then we used to have a guy that used to look after us and look after when we went on the road. He'd make sure we flied first class. The promoters pulled up everything, And I tell people we went left on the airplane, And then when that person left, he was head of promotion at the time for Universal MCA. When he left, he kind of took a sideways step. Yeah, we were doing Reggae Sunsplash, which was obviously the biggest reggae show in the world, a reggae festival in the world at the time.
Sure.
But then in 1985, you rightly said it, Patrick, we were about to go on embark on a Caribbean tour, and the tour was sold out. Barbados, Antigua, St. Croix, St. Thomas, St. Martin.
Wow.
And Jamaica. We love playing in Jamaica. We absolutely loved playing in Jamaica. Just before we went out, Patrick took something. He was in a pub and somebody could have slipped him a Mickey, as they said, but he ended up in a toxic ward in the hospital down the road here.
Yeah.
And, I went to see him and I thought, his mum said he was all right, but he wasn't. Anyway, Fred decided to come on the road and said he would look after him personally. So that's why they released him. Halfway through the tour, Patrick relapsed. When we ended up back in Jamaica, he actually didn't play the last show because he wasn't well enough.
Wow.
But the Jamaican government at the time, because of the status of the band, he couldn't fly back. So they made sure before he flew back, he was well enough to come back, if you understand what I'm saying. So they made him rest up.
Wow.
If you looked at it on a business, if we had somebody there that was business-wise,
yeah,
they would have actually just said, look, guys, you need to take a 6-month break.
Yeah.
One of the contributing factors also was that we were only allowed to work 42 days a year. That was it.
Wow.
Not even once a week.
Because of your youth, because of how young you guys
age. Well, it was more the Patrick, Calvin, and Michael's age. Me and Junior were fine.
That's right. Yeah.
And we had discussions about emigrating or, going to America and living and studying.
Yeah.
So we could do the set. But the parents, Michael and Calvin's mom and dad wouldn't have it. In fact, it was part of the catalyst was also, and Michael would agree with this, his mom and dad decided they didn't trust the lawyer that we had.
Yep.
Because he was too in bed with Tony Owens.
Yep.
So they felt, and rightly so, they had every right to go and pick their own lawyer. Yeah. And Michael will tell you that it was just like eeny, meeny, miny, mo. That was it. They didn't know what they were doing. But in all honesty, what they did was, once you've got two lawyers, as you know, one of them has to be alpha. You can't have two bulls in a pen.
No, it's not going to work. Yeah.
So the one in London, because he's a so-called music lawyer, he sees his arse about them getting their own lawyer. That was part of the reason. So you got two lawyers trying to beat each other up and one-upmanship. So that slows everything down. Then Patrick comes back, and then I get rumors that they're going to throw Patrick out, and I'm like, no. Remember, I'm 18 now.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were going to follow your own way at that point. Yeah.
Well, it was a decision. I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
I didn't want the band to break up. I just said, you know what? I kept getting your musical youth, and there's me in the middle. I'm like, D&E. And, my whole ethos was I needed to be mentally well.
Makes a lot of sense now. And I mentioned, I'm glad you say that, because it leads into the next question, which is, I mentioned Patrick's drug problem, which I understand only spiraled, later into further legal problems, and further he then tragically died, for people who don't know the history, that he died of a heart condition at just 24 years old.
Yes.
And I was very sad, as I mentioned a little bit earlier at the beginning of the interview, about Freddie Junior Waite, that he, I think it was well reported that he had, when the band broke up, he had a lot of mental health struggles after it broke up, and he never fully, I believe, recovered, and he only passed away, just as we mentioned, in this past year.
He passed away July 20th this year, to be precise.
And
it was schizophrenia.
Wow.
So it's out there. it's documented.
Yeah.
But I wasn't too happy on how it was trying to be hidden, and I'm thinking, why are you trying to hide this? This man's legacy is more than what you're giving him.
100% it is. And I'm so sorry. First of all, I want to just tell you, I was sorry to hear about his passing. I know, you guys were very close friends, and the drumming,
Yeah.
I just want to say, the drumming on Blind Boy is wicked. And and it's on so many of the tracks, his drumming, you go back and listen, is wicked. And I was moved by the outpouring of affection from famous stars when it was posted on your social media about how he passed, and you
That was
could
me.
see an outpouring of affection, and people talked about his influence as a drummer.
Yeah. Me and Junior were closest. So when he went into his mental problems, it was hard. But then there's only so much you can do as a person from the outside.
Yeah.
I had to leave that for the likes of Tony and his mom, to deal with.
In addition to that tragic story of your friendship and what happened, there's the tragic story and this tragic story of the Waite brothers. I would ask Michael this if he were here. My understanding is that there has been an estrangement also between Michael and Kelvin. That they haven't communicated much, I understand. And, I understand, just to say, I know that Kelvin has done something musically as well. I know he has worked on a solo album, doing things in Poland and some other places.
Yeah, that's right.
And, the only thing I was going to ask, and feel free to say you're not qualified to answer this, but I was going to ask Michael directly is, does he think that the rift between the brothers, himself and his brother, is really just another casualty of you guys being such big child stars, reaching such heights of fame, and then it all kind of falling apart?
Possibly. Their personalities are too different.
Yeah.
Two different personalities. Now, I got to put this on record.
Yeah.
I worked with Calvin first before I started working with Michael.
Wow.
You understand?
Yeah, I didn't know that, but yeah.
I worked with Calvin first.
Wow.
And then when I got together with Michael, I asked Calvin twice if he wanted to come back and play with the three of us.
Yeah.
And he said, no, I don't need to ask a man a third time.
I understand.
You're a grown man. You got to make your decision. Once you've made your decision, listen, Steve, I made a decision at 18 to leave the band. At 18. Remember, I'm leaving my wages, any money that I got.
Big decision. Yeah.
I'm 18.
Yeah,
I don't know nothing. I don't know anything.
It's such a big thing. Now, after
retrospectively, the decision was correct.
Yeah.
Retrospectively.
Yeah. I mean, I understand you needed to do what was right for you, for your happiness at that point, mental health as well, as an 18.
Of course, it was happiness. We talk about mental health now, but it was more about me being happy.
Nice.
Nothing more, nothing less.
I'm so glad that you say that. Now, after the band broke up, I understand that that Michael continued a music career. He had a band called 5 a.m. and he produced some remixes for some pretty big artists, The Brat, Kelly Rowland, and others. And I understand that he co-founded a record label called 5 a.m. Records.
And
I think he focused mostly on gospel and R&B.
He did.
And then now I think he also, I don't know how he has time to do all this, because I understand he has kids too. So I don't know. You guys both have these children. I don't understand where you find the time for all this, but he also, am I right that he would teach music to children who have with emotional behavior issues? Michael did.
Right. So first and foremost, I was one of the first to have kids. Michael didn't have his kids until he was his first child, until he was 40. His twin boys, 46. He was when he had his first children.
Cow.
So he had lots of time on his hand. He didn't have no kids. I, on the other hand, had kids and a wife.
So you had to get busy, and that's why my understanding is that you after 18 and you broke up, you stayed in LA for a while. You worked on another album. You even did some more work with Stevie Wonder. as
Right.
as you said. And after that album, though, my understanding is that you, like you say, you started a family and you got into the car rental business. My understanding is you then ended up somehow you went from like the bottom to the top and you owned your own car rental businesses, right?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And you know, became a business, I would say a businessman, and then also again, I don't know how you find time because you have, like you say, you have kids too,
Yeah.
multiple kids. You then
Yeah.
went back to school, correct me if I'm wrong, and you got a master's degree in music yourself.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
Unbelievable. And this is all before you and Michael, or, you know, around this time where you guys are now also reforming, getting back together, reuniting
Yeah.
this great project of musical youth, you and Michael.
So firstly, just before I went out to LA, I spent 6 months with Tony Owens had arranged a tour of Ireland with Michael, with Patrick and Junior, myself.
Yeah.
But Patrick wasn't well. Junior wasn't well. So I ended up doing the tour on my own with a backing band. It was only supposed to be 3 weeks. We ended up spending 6 months in Ireland.
Wow.
Southern Ireland and Northern Ireland.
Nice.
So I was learning my craft. Anyway, when I got back, wasn't happy, got rid of Tony Owens, and then met up with my manager at the time. Well, the guy who ran the tour in Ireland, he contacted me and we got together. I'd actually signed to Island Records through Chris Blackwell. So I had to go and see Chris Blackwell.
Wow. Yeah.
Chris listened to the stuff that I'd done.
Yeah.
He said, "What do you want?" I signed to Island Records. Then I went out to LA because Stevie agreed to record.
Do some work with you, which is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's basic. And then when we were out there, I'll never forget, it was 1987, December. My manager at the time was 36 and he had a heart attack.
Wow.
At 36.
Holy cow.
Nobody was having heart attacks at 36 in 1987. Yeah, I drove him to see the Sinai Hospital.
Wow.
And they did the operation on him that saved his life.
Wow.
He's still alive today. He's the same guy who helped us get our royalties back.
Oh yeah, from The Wedding Singer. Yeah.
So that then precipitated that we did, you know, obviously spending so much time. Stevie recorded the 2 songs, came back, went on to record, signed to an independent label, recorded Imagine That, did a video. Stevie's in the video for What You're Talking About, and Stevie doesn't go in many people's videos. I know that for a fact. Yeah. So, yeah, you'd have thought, well, he's got it all on a plate. Nothing could be further from the truth, you know. And then basically, I took a backseat. You know, I needed to spend time with my wife and my kids and make sure I was around.
Yeah.
You know, so
then that's very important.
I got back from London and I said, "Nah, I'm going to go and do something," but alongside being able to get away from it if I needed to go and do my music. So I went into car rental, started off valeting cars, then went on to be a manager, left there, set up my own company, shut that one down, and then set up another company. And that company is still going today. That was 2002, 2003. That company, it's called Next Rentals, is still going today.
Wonderful. In Birmingham.
Yeah.
Nice.
Birmingham.
Now, and that brings us to when reggae was king.
Okay.
Which is a new, just to make sure everyone is aware, this is a new musical youth album released in October 2020. And as I mentioned, and this is a very cool LP. It has some new versions. I'm glad you mentioned of musical youth songs of old. And there's some very nice covers of Jamaican roots reggae classics. And there are also some new original compositions too. Now, this is just an album that you and Michael have done together, right?
So what happened is, when Reggae Was King was born out of when I was studying, because I thought I want to pass my knowledge on. Yeah. And in this country, you have to have the papers. You can't just go.
The degrees.
I've got a #1 selling single, you know, blah, blah, blah. I've been nominated for a Grammy. No. You need to have these papers. I was 37 at the time.
Wow.
When I went to university. And I decided for my final thesis, I did a degree. So I got my 2-1. I did that. And I thought, you've been playing music so long, man. 2-1, master degree is just a degree. You know, everybody can get a degree. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go on and do my master's. So I did my master's. And in my master's, you have to do a performance. So this performance, I remember writing it and talking to the lecturers about it. And I said, look, I don't want this to just be this performance and then it stops. I need this to be able to carry on and see if we can do it commercially, because that's basically what you should be able to do. So I was reading a book called When Reggae Was King, but it was mainly about the UK and stuff.
Yeah, nice.
So,
that's where that idea came from. Yeah,
that's where it came from. So then I decided I got to have a criteria. So I looked at the criteria and I thought, let's start the songs from 1972 to 1982. So when reggae started officially with, Harder They Come, the seminal reggae film.
Yeah.
Got through. And, I just wanted to be slightly different to UB40 in so much as, Front Door was Cool Ruler, and we had the titles for them: Cool Ruler, the King of Reggae Music. The John Hart was the Frank Sinatra of reggae music.
Right.
Lincoln Sugar Booger Minot was the dancehall bubbler, and so on. Dennis Brown was the crown prince of reggae music. So
True.
It was all there. It was all there. So it was just a case of which songs. And then Hard Times was put in there because in 1981, when it was released, we spent the whole summer singing Hard Times.
Wow. Yeah.
But then the original composition, you've got Youth of Today, a new version. You've also got a new version of Dutchie. But that was more the record company in America wanted that. But I don't mind. Father, believe it or not.
I'm so happy you're going to talk about this, because this is the song I really wanted to ask about. Go ahead. Father. Father on When Reggae Was King. This is an original. Musical youth composition. And let me just say before you go on about Father, because I found this to be a very, very curious and moving track. Let me just recite this just to be sure, and then I'll let you go.
I wrote the lyric.
You did? Okay, because I have to. The lyric, if I have this right, it says, "I write songs, I write rhymes. I'm packing on my sorrows and putting them in these lines." Yeah. Then the song goes on and it says, "So I became famous really fast, but my father thinks I'm a loser. He thinks I should be working a 9 to 5.
Yeah, that's the chorus.
And so who is this father?
Right. So you got to understand. So let me give you the backstory to this song.
Yeah.
Backstory to this song started in a country called Slovenia.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't expecting you to say that.
You know they like reggae in Slovenia?
I didn't know.
Former Yugoslavia.
Wow.
Slovenia. There's about 2 million people. Now, I got a mutual friend, and he trained as a lawyer. He's 6'4", blonde, right? He trained as a lawyer for 4 years. His wife is now a judge. His ex-wife is now a judge, right? He never practiced one. You were a lawyer. He never practiced one. He never practiced one day as a lawyer. He became a musician.
Smart man. Smart guy.
He became a musician, Stephen. And he actually, in Yugoslavia at the time, it was communist law. You couldn't take the dinara out the country. And he sneaked 1,500 dinar, 1,800 dinars out, took it to Germany, changed it to Deutschmark, brought it to England, changed it to pounds. And he brought this song to me that was all Slovenian.
Unbelievable.
I said to him, give me the story. He said, well, my father, he thought I should be a lawyer. He never practiced one day. He went to university 4 years, never practiced one day. And then I took it and I went, wow, okay. So then when you were reading that lyric there, my father thinks that I'm a loser. Yeah. I'm taking the translation slightly different from Slovenian.
Unbelievable, Dennis.
And then when you get to the bridge, I might not be a Dylan or Marley. that's my lines. I might not be, and in this country, when we were growing up, in this country, as musicians, as much as we had a #1 single, people always said to us, what else do you do?
Wow, yeah, that's so interesting. I'm glad you say that because I often ask from Jamaica, artists from Jamaica who I interview,
Yeah.
what did your parents think when you
Mhm.
decide you're gonna not be a welder or you're not gonna be whatever it
Nine to
is,
five.
and you're
Nine to
suddenly
five. Nine to
yeah,
five.
you're gonna turn down a steady paycheck to go
Yeah.
be an artist and a musician,
Yeah.
and so I'm so happy to have asked you. Now let me say, Dennis, looking at my various recorders. I'm noticing that I've tasked you, and you didn't know you were gonna have to. You thought you were gonna have Michael to be able to help you out. So
That's fine.
I've really exhausted you today. We've been talking now for over an hour and a half. And I definitely, before we hang up for today at least,
Yeah.
I need to ask you a few questions about Scientist and this dub album and
Cool.
a video clip that I sent you, which I'm going to ask you about. But
Yep.
before I get to that, I want to just tell you. I When Reggae Was King is a very you can tell that there's a lot of musical history and experience and richness that is in that album. And I hope that when we connect again, when you come next year,
Yeah.
we'll be able to dig into, like I said, there's only so much time we can dig into
Yeah.
things,
I got
but
you.
we'll dig into, I promise you, and maybe we'll include Michael too.
You'll be there.
Yeah, we'll include when we'll talk more about when Reggae was king. Now, I want to bring up the legendary Scientist
Go on.
because on YouTube before this
Yeah.
interview, I discovered this short video clip called "Musical Youth Meets Scientist" at
Yeah.
King Tubby's studio in
Yeah.
1982. I'm talking everyone, has to watch this historic video footage. In the clip that I sent you, it's like
Mhm.
a 3-minute clip, maybe less. And in the clip, all the members of Musical Youth are in King Tubby's studio in
Yeah.
Jamaica, and you're standing around Scientist, who looks like a babe himself. He looks like right? He's so young
Yeah.
in that photo.
That's right.
And Scientist is running the mixing board, and Musical Youth is standing around Scientist, and everybody is skanking to the beat, including legendary singer Sugar Minot, who you mentioned
Yes.
earlier, and
Yeah.
he's there. And later, also in the video, you see the artist Gold, who used to team up with Don Carlos. He's
Yeah.
also in that clip. And what's so remarkable there's so many things that are remarkable about that clip, but is what I find to be very compelling is that there's such an easy, natural bond that you can see between the Jamaican roots artists and
Uh-huh.
Musical Youth, who is there
Yeah.
flying in as youngsters from the UK. And in fact, in that video, I think it's Sugar Mina who is saying, you can hear it. He's saying he's proud to see reggae going international with
Yes.
Musical Youth success. And in a number of people are name checking and shouting out Musical Youth's then big hit, Heartbreaker. So they're saying, Heartbreaker, right? And
Yeah.
so really this footage, this little clip, it should be playing on a loop in a reggae museum, continuous, that people can stop by. And I was shocked. I was even more shocked and surprised, Dennis, when that I learned. I don't know how I dug it up, but that day in the studio at King Tubby's, that Scientist mixed an entire version of the Youth of Today album. So
You did. Yeah.
let me ask you first, what do you remember about coming to Jamaica, meeting Scientist, and in doing that dub album with Scientist in the studio?
Okay. So timeline is we're going out to Jamaica to record do the 2 videos for Youth of Today, not Youth,
Heartbreaker.
Heartbreaker,
Yeah.
and Never Gonna Give You Up.
Right.
Whilst we're there, we're also doing a documentary for the BBC called This Is Me, Musical Roots, because there's a whole documentary on it. It's about 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And
I may have seen it. Yeah.
we go down to Rio Grande, but we also had our brass section. Our brass section put some brass on top of them tracks.
Right.
So and this is the home of reggae music.
Yeah.
King Tubby's. channel.
Tubby's. It doesn't get better.
Tubby's studio.
Yeah.
So what you're seeing there is us in our element. You know, we're in the mecca of reggae music. This is the mecca of reggae music, you know.
It has to be. It is. Yeah.
It's like, wow.
Yeah.
You know,
Unbelievable.
you're not gonna get that, you're never gonna get that sound again. I don't care how they want to recreate it, never ever will you get the sounds like you got then.
Now, when you were there in King Tubby studio with scientists that day, do you remember, did you see King Tubby there too?
Only scientists. I don't remember.
And what about Jammies? Back then he used to call himself Prince Jammy, but now it's King Jammy. Did you see Jammy, or was it scientists?
Just scientists.
And it was just basically from what I can tell, you know, because it's so impressive to think about, you know, because of his youth. But it seems like Scientist is like fully in control for that day, running the show at King Tubby's, as young as he was. Yes. You guys had flown in, and to think about how big you guys were in the world at that point, you know, that, you know, and you're there with Scientists. It's just an incredible video. And Dennis, you know, I asked you before today's interview, I said, you know, hey, how can I listen to this dub album? Because, you know, of course I can't imagine anything. I have to listen to this. And then I was so floored about it. And then I understand from you, correct me if I'm wrong, that your former manager, Tony Owens, that he still has the master recording of that dub album. Is that what you understand too?
Yeah, quarter inch.
And can so okay, this is mind-boggling. How is it that he is in possession of those, and why does he have ownership of the masters?
Well, he has ownership of them because he went out there with the quarter inches and got Tubby's to do it. But I don't think he told the record company, but he never told us either. You understand?
And then my understanding is further, I don't know if you know this is true, but I heard from Scientists, just recently, that he connected with Tony Owens. Yeah. And Tony Owens has said that he still does have the dub recordings. Just like you say. And it's actually possible, I understand. We don't know for sure, but I understand that it's possible. Tell me if I'm right about this, that after all these years, that dub album, and I mean, musical youth fans around the world, I'm sure their ears are perking up right now, right? So it's actually possible that this old album that's Tony Owens, I don't know, it's been sitting in his, you know what, in his laundry hamper for all these years or something, right? And we can't imagine I can't imagine as a dub fan and musical youth fan, think about it together, Scientist, musical youth, we might actually, this album could possibly see the light of day. Is that your understanding too?
No, because I don't talk to Tony Owens, so I couldn't tell you.
So you don't know.
You probably speak to Scientists.
Yeah. And I know now let me ask you also, I believe that you've been in touch with Scientists, and it's possible that you guys you say you're coming out to Los Angeles. Scientists is Los Angeles based.
Is he?
Yeah, well, he lives outside of he lives close enough. That's where I meet him in the studio. Where does he live? So my dream, Dennis, is going to be for us Scientists, yourself, and Michael, maybe, if he can come.
Michael will be there.
Yeah. You know, I would love to see you guys in the studio. Hopefully, my hope is by then, Scientists will have gotten these tracks from Tony Owens, these masters, and we'll all be sitting in the studio, probably toasting a champagne, because you guys are going to be, you know, sitting on some musical gift of the gods.
Well, it'd be a nice thought. Listen, Stephen, I believe in the legacy of musical youth. I believe in that because that's us.
100%.
We didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah.
All we knew was we were going to play to the best of our ability. And that was for the adults around us to work out what they needed to work out.
Nice.
That's why, as I said to you, I know there was a recording of Tony took the quarter inches, because I remember I can hear the brass. I can hear it
Yeah.
all.
So you
Yeah,
know. Yeah.
I do know. But
Now,
because of my relationship with Tony Owens, what a lot of people don't realize is when I left the band,
yeah.
Tony managed me for a year.
Okay. Yeah.
He managed me personally for a year.
I didn't know.
So
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
introduced me to Fatis Burrell, you
Wow.
know, God
Nice.
rest his soul. So you can imagine, and he's now working with Calvin, which you can make of that what you
Wow.
want.
I didn't know that either. I didn't know that
Yeah,
either.
yeah.
Wow.
And we can make
Well,
it that what you want, but the only people putting anything out really and pushing it, you'll notice as you go online, most of the interviews you'll see is either Michael or myself. You
yeah,
don't get Calvin.
that's accurate. My hope is, like I say, that we will be able to connect with scientists all together, and we'll see what
We'll see.
happens with
We'll
that.
see. The funny thing is, the
Yeah,
good thing is,
yeah.
when I've been out into LA since I did a gig with Snoop, and I used a pickup band, and I tried to use a pickup band, and last year I came out, I couldn't do any shows because I didn't get my visa, but I decided, you know what, I'm going to carry my own band this time, but I'm only going to carry me, Michael, my bass player, my drummer. Now the drummer, he helped produce When Reggae Was King, so he's a
Okay,
producer himself. So for him to meet scientists as well would be like, yo.
that's amazing. And by the way, your son is also a musician too. He's a
Yes,
trumpet player, true?
he plays trumpet he plays trumpet on When Reggae Was King.
It's beautiful. Now, I want to thank you so much, Dennis,
Yeah.
especially, handling this interview, very, and all these questions from me, and taking this time, and it's really just a blessing, Dennis, to connect with you. I can't tell you how much of a fan I am of Musical Youth, because
Thanks.
I'm a giant fan, and especially, you know, it's just I just can't wait to see what happens, as you guys go forward, and hopefully, like I say, we're going to connect when you come to Los Angeles
Uh-huh.
next year. And I only want to ask you two last questions
God.
for today, and the
Let's
first one
hold on,
really,
Steve. Let's put this on record.
yeah,
Questions weren't sent to me beforehand.
no,
Good.
100% they were not.
No.
And you've done a yeoman's job today answering them, and I thank you for being so candid and forthright. I hope
Mhm.
that the fans of Musical Youth will find this interview to be enlightening and
Mhm.
useful to round out the history of what's been done and what's been said about this marvelously talented band.
Mm.
The second to last question. So
Yeah.
not the last one, but my
No, that's
second to
fine.
last question for you, Dennis, is what can you tell the Musical Youth fans about what to expect in 2023? So coming in the coming year, and also years coming, if you can think even further than that, what should we expect to see from Musical Youth, from you and from Michael?
So from me and Michael, we're just starting to. We're actually just for the first time since lockdown. I came into some studio equipment, so I put a studio together. Never
Right.
really had a studio because I always like to be away from the house, if you
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah. Keep your work
Oh,
separate. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So now we got a studio. My whole philosophy is to record as much music as possible,
Great.
but not just, it's got to be quality.
Yeah.
Hopefully, in reggae, when reggae was king, you can hear it's reggae, but it's not the same as everybody else's. We're not
Yeah.
using, we've got, we always recognize the difference between British reggae and Jamaican reggae is two different feels.
True.
We always used to say we'd play it slightly faster because it was colder here. You understand?
Wow.
So that was the first thing. Now in 2023, we're just putting together some stuff where we've got now we're looking because we're more adult now,
Yeah.
so we can tackle more things. We don't need to sing about nothing negative.
True.
Musical youth, I understand where musical youth sits in the pantheon of reggae music.
Yeah.
We reach a different audience. We reach a totally different audience, but we also reach the roots audience.
And
I don't have a plethora of reggae promoters knocking down my door, beating down my door. What I do have is the 80s promoters who love the song, and it reaches that audience that suddenly, from what I get to understand, Pastor Dutchie turned a lot of people onto reggae. It
100%.
made them delve into reggae more.
Yes.
And they
Yeah.
started, when you put up on YouTube, you know, Pastor Dutchie, they also looked at this, and this,
True.
you know. So I get it. But I also know that people hear music youth and they think, oh, I don't know if they're going to be any good. Well, let me tell you, when we do our live stuff, and we're going to do a live album of Youth of Today, we're going to do a live album of Youth of Today.
Nice.
We're going to spend at least 6 months recording the band, playing it live, because we got the brass, you know, we got the brass, everything's there, authentic, but authentic music of youth. And once we've done that, that's the next project, live album and new recordings. So that's
Awesome.
where we're going. And hopefully we get to play in places where we never got to play, like France. We never really got to play Holland, even though we had big success across Europe, Germany, Australia, New Zealand. We did Japan. So you can imagine at the time in 1983 when we did Japan, as I say, reggae isn't the normal genre, but it's the genre of New Zealand.
Yeah.
You know,
No, it's big. It's bigger than people. It's bigger than people realize.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but we're also, how can I say, we're losing that reggae band vibe.
That's true.
Getting more sing J's and DJs.
Well, that's because there's less, like you say, there's less live musicians going into the studio. We have too much of the, you know, drum tracks and
that's right.
These digital things.
I purposely went for live sounding, so live bass. When we did I Shot the Sheriff, I sent it to Blue Mountain Music, and they came back and said we love the bass on that track.
Beautiful.
But our bass player is a big Bob Marley fan. We all are, and
well,
that's what, you know.
It's I want to say that it's a joy to see you, Michael, you, Dennis, so comfortable, and Michael too, because I've seen interviews that he's done, and so it's nice to see you guys at this stage of your life to be comfortable in your skin, comfortable with your past success, and understand, as you just very poignantly described, how you've come to appreciate the different audiences that, you know, that you're reaching today versus back in the day, and that it's no problem. You guys are thrilled and happy to be touching, you know, different people in different places. And I want to say to you, before I ask you my last question, and that we'll end on, is that again, I can't wait to talk to you again when you come to LA, and I will be in touch with you, because first of all, we've had a almost, you know, 2-hour interview today, and I've got to, there'll be some things, probably some Brummy, I think you say, or the Birmingham slang even, some things I'll have to call you about and make sure before I put the transcript down on paper for all time, I've got everything that you've said accurately. So I'll be in touch with you. This is not a goodbye. This is just until we talk again. But before we hang up for today, I want to wish you a happy New Year. I'm going to wish you all the best health and success and joy and love going into the new year. What I'd ask you to do is, there are so many people like myself who are musical youth fans. We love your music. We know you. It's like almost like you listen to musical youth a lot, then you start to feel like, man, I almost like I know these guys. You know, and you guys had such a big imprint. We can see even in cultural TV shows and everything today. People really respect and care about you guys. What's your final message that you want Dennis to communicate to, you know, all these people who have been tracking you now for like you say, you've been doing this for like over 40 years now. You've been a performer, and what do you want to say to all your fans out there who just really appreciate you and musical youth and your music?
Well, firstly, you got to say thank you. Thank you for supporting, because it would, but for social media,
Yeah,
okay? If I never set up the Facebook site, if I never set up the Instagram site, if I never set up the Twitter site,
yeah,
I wouldn't have seen all this love. Now, I could have just been negative about it, but there's no point, because Musical Youth, as much as, and I get this, people try and make out like Musical Youth wasn't success. Musical Youth was as successful as any artist out there.
true.
And there's a slight difference in so much as when we were out in the 80s, people didn't I don't even think we were, even I sit back and go, do you know how successful this band was?
Right.
And then when you're talking about it, you're listening to it as an adult, and you're
Yeah.
going, how young are these guys? Even I as a seasoned musician, listen, I go, wow, that's Patrick on bass. That's Calvin.
How are they playing these instruments so well? Yeah.
And then I look back on the videos, and we did the Montreal Jazz Festival. We played Israel. People don't realize.
You guys, you know what? I'm glad you said you guys are up there like it's nothing. Like we've been doing this and it's no sweat. And
No.
and even you see Michael in the picture with Michael and Pat and Paul McCartney. And it's like hey, this is like any other day, I mean, so just I'm so happy that you come to this place, and I just want to wish you so much success going forward. It's been just a blessing talking to you. Stay safe, and we'll be in touch. We'll be in touch, and please tell Michael.
Oh yeah.
Next time it's you and him. He's gonna have to He's gonna have to do double duty, right?
Well, Michael and myself, we talk for each other. So
Nice.
whatever I'm telling you, he would agree.
Respect.
There's no, we decided a long time ago that, look, we as a band, we never ever was coached on how to do an interview. We were just plunked in front of a TV screen, ask the question, or Mike, ask the question, we'll answer it. And I can look back and go, wow, there's us growing up on TV. That's us growing up on TV.
Respect.
My kids just know me as their dad. My son plays on stage with me, and it's nice, but I never forced him down that route. But it's nice because I said, you're a trumpeter, come and play some trumpet for your dad. But I never get a free gig out of him. I have to pay him.
Well, respect. I hope I get to meet him too when you guys, maybe he'll fly out with you to Los Angeles. So, hey, have a great rest of the evening there in the UK, and respect, and I will be in touch with you. Take care, my friend.
Happy New Year to you, Stephen.
Happy New Year, Dennis. Bye-bye.
Take care.